Hello, everyone, and welcome to Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. Good to have you with us here on this early morning broadcast here on the East Coast. We are broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. For those of you who are with us for our coverage of the Now's rideshare mission from Vandenberg Space Force Base. Clear skies, no fog out at Vandy, but now the Cape is doing its best impression of what Vandenberg tends to look like, with a decently thick layer of fog covering the bottom, roughly two-thirds of the rocket, but you can see the payload fairings and the shiny new second stage sticking up above the fog out there at Space Launch Complex 40. SpaceX raised its Falcon 9 rocket into the launch position yesterday, and as things stand right now, they are tracking towards an on-time departure, looking at a liftoff at 7:10 a.m. Eastern this morning, 11:10 UTC for our friends around the world. Just starting to get a little bit of sun creeping over the horizon line there. This mission set to take flight just about 10 minutes after sunrise this morning, so all things being equal, it should be a pretty spectacular launch. Taking a look at the cloud cover over the Sunshine State here, you can see some offshore clouds thanks to the satellite view from GOES East. Pretty clear skies over Florida and the Cape, though. You can see some of the clouds offshore that we're just showing you in the satellite view off to the left side of the frame here. You may see some occasional pops of lightning, but as we were just showing you, those clouds are pretty well offshore. This Falcon flight is going to be taking a northeasterly trajectory, so not heading off into that cloud bank that we were just showing. Actually, we can bring back the satellite view just to give folks a better picture. The Falcon 9 rocket's going to be heading northeast along the east coast of the United States, so kind of skirting in between that big pocket of cloud that's offshore, so it shouldn't present too much of an issue today. However, unfortunately, and as is sort of a rare case, the 45th Weather Squadron did not publish launch weather forecasts, at least publicly, for this mission, so we don't have as good of a bead on the weather outlook for today's flight as we might normally. As we're getting rolling here this morning, want to thank the nearly 300 of you, those early birds getting up with us, joining us at the top of our live stream. Really appreciate you being up with us at this point in time. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream, allowing some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. As we're getting going, want to thank our wonderful channel member community for making this and every live launch opportunity possible. So thanks to folks like Fletcher Boy, Joni, Alexander Pinto, KH, and many others. Cumulus Granatus, good morning to you. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, which is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. We've got most of the team out today helping us out with today's coverage. Our Spacefly Now editor, Stephen Young, is running the technical operations of this broadcast. Photographer John Pisani out in the field, making sure all the cameras are in focus, framed up nicely. We'll be tracking the flight of the Falcon 9 from here at the KSC press site. Photographers Adam Bernstein, Michael Kane are off on this mission, but if you're not already following the fellas on X, you can find them at their handles here. John is at John Pisani Photo, Michael is at MD Kane Jr., and Adam is at A Byrne NYC. Be sure to follow Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now. You can also find us on Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook for those of you who are not on X. We're also joined this morning with tracking views by our friends Pete Carsons with Max Q Production, as well as Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images, keeping tabs on the Falcon 9 from down on Merritt Island. T-minus 50 minutes, 42 seconds and counting. We're coming to you after what is considered by SpaceX to be a pretty darn successful day yesterday. I just saw that pop of lightning off to the left in that pocket of clouds that we were just talking about. Again, those clouds are pretty well offshore, but do provide a nice little bit of visual layering to this turn-based shot. So kind of a nice little bit of ambiance. For those of you who were not with us for our Starship coverage, SpaceX was able to finally launch Starship Flight 10 on its third attempt. And SpaceX was able to accomplish a number of the milestones with the ship upper stage that had previously eluded them with the Block 2 variant. For the first time, they were able to deploy the Starlink simulators about 18 and a half minutes after liftoff. That was followed by what appeared to be a successful in-space Raptor relight demonstration for just a brief moment or two, and then a controlled splashdown in the Indian Ocean when all was said and done, putting the ship upper stage, Ship 37, right where they were expecting, as captured by the buoy camera. that was out waiting for it. Flight number 11 at some point in the likely not too distant future will be the final launch of a Block 2 version of the ship upper stage before SpaceX moves into the next big paradigm shift for the Starship program, which is the version 3 Starship. And it is that iteration which we are expecting SpaceX to be the one that will perform orbital flights eventually. That's the version that is designed to eventually be able to be caught by the launch and catch tower, like we've seen previously with the Super Heavy booster. TBD on when Flight 11 is going to take place, given the level of success that SpaceX appeared to have had with Starship Flight 10. It doesn't seem as if there were any big issues that would have caused a mishap investigation to be triggered. So things will not be stymied by that. And so could see Flight 11 as, depending on the readiness of the hardware, potentially in as soon as just a couple of weeks, maybe a month or so from now. But that'll, of course, be up to SpaceX and its engineering team as far as the flight plan that they have in mind, and again the readiness of the hardware, of course. Taking a look back at our live chat, I see we've got moderator Nazi Space Girl with us today. Much more reasonable hour down there in Australia. Good to see you, Stephanie. One last little bit of housekeeping that I was remiss to mention earlier in our show today. Still quite early here on the East Coast. If you have a comment or question about this mission or other goings on in the realm of space or spaceflight, and you'd like to have your comment or query elevated for potential discussion, you can use the YouTube Super Chat feature. And not only will you be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the count, but you'll also be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and that, my friends, is always greatly appreciated. So we've got Deb Reese checking in from Colorado this morning. Now we've always got some Florida folks in here. Let us know where you're watching from today. George Brax checking in from the Villages here in Central Florida. Marianne joining us from New Jersey today. Of course, Stephanie down in Australia. Dayton, Ohio in the house. Good to see our global audience checking in. Cobra Emergency joining us from England. Good morning to you. Vero Beach, William B. Hello, hello. Well, as we're getting ready to see this flight of the Falcon 9 rocket here in 45 minutes, let's go ahead and take a beat to talk about the countdown timeline for today's mission. And the milestones still ahead for SpaceX as it prepares for the flight of its Falcon 9 rocket from Pad 40. Coming up at T-minus 38 minutes or thereabouts is when SpaceX will make the call on the start of prop load for today's Falcon 9 flight. SpaceX does this pull electronically, so if it feels like it's in a good posture, they can do this a little bit earlier, but following the go-ahead for fueling, Tanking of the rocket will begin at T minus 35 minutes with a loading of RP-1, which is a rocket-grade kerosene, on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. At the same time, liquid oxygen will start to flow on board the Falcon 9's first stage. T minus 30 minutes is when they start to load cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's first stage. Same is true in the second stage, a few minutes thereafter. Helium, of course, is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. 23 minutes out, the second stage kerosene tank should be full. At T minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is when the strong back chilled out process gets underway. SpaceX at this point in the count is thermally conditioning the feed lines there at the pad ahead of loading liquid oxygen aboard the rocket's second stage. We see this visually begin to manifest at T minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds as the so-called big vent. It lasts about 4 minutes in duration, setting up for the LOX to start flowing at the 16-minute mark. Seven minutes before flight, the Falcon 9 engine chill sequence gets underway. This is when SpaceX flows a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, helping to protect those engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. 6 minutes before takeoff, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then at T minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract. That's when the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings open up, and then the transporter erector, otherwise referred to as the strong back, will recline just a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket, and it'll stay in that position until liftoff. Then at that point, it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. 3 minutes before takeoff, the first stage liquid oxygen tank should be full. 2 minutes out, the same will be true on the second stage. And then at that point, the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. Let's pause on the count real quick. Sight that we don't often get to see here at the press site, thankfully. You can see a gator that is slowly descending into the waters of the turn basin, thankfully going away from our cameras and camera equipment. We've been around the block enough times to know how to stay safe here in the dark at the press site. But just a brief reminder that this is the Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge, and there's all manner of wildlife at all times of the day and night. Sometimes we see some manatees cruising around here, sometimes more of a scaly friend. Just wanted to clock that before she or he went entirely out of view. Coming back to the countdown here. T minus 1 minute is when the Falcon 9 enters into its final automated sequence. The control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch 45 seconds before liftoff. The engine ignition command is issued at T minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite as expected, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Once again, currently targeting 7:10 a.m. Eastern, 11:10 UTC, T minus 40 minutes and counting. Time now T minus 37 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. At this point, the SpaceX launch director should have made the call on the start of prop load for today's mission. Assuming that go ahead was in fact given, we're now less than 2 minutes away from the start of fueling for this Falcon 9 rocket. For those of you early risers here in the United States, or for those in parts of the world where it's a much more reasonable hour, we've got another launch that'll fit right into your schedule tomorrow morning. Looking at a flight from Launch Complex 39A with another batch of 28 Starlink V2 mini satellites. That's looking to lift off just about 1:27, I believe, is the departure time for that mission. Yes, 1:27 a.m. Eastern, 05:27 UTC for those around the world. We saw the strong back, or the transporter erector, head on into the hangar there at Complex 39A yesterday. Should emerge at some point today with the Falcon 9 rocket, and it'll head over to the pad. And then be brought into the launch configuration, of course. That said, if you have not already hit subscribe beneath the YouTube video here, now's a great time to do so. And be sure to ring the bell icon too, so that you'll be notified when next we go live, which, all things being equal, will be just about 12:30 ahead of the flight of Starlink 10-11 tomorrow. T minus 33 minutes, 50 seconds and counting. It's going to be a little tricky to determine the start of fueling today, just because all that fog is decided to settle on back in right up in front of and around the first stage booster. And unfortunately, it's been quite a long time since SpaceX announced the start of tanking for Falcon 9 rocket flying. Just a Starlink mission with nothing else super notable about it for the company. So likely won't get any help from SpaceX as far as denoting the start of fueling for today's mission either. But assuming the go-ahead was given at the T minus 38-minute mark, SpaceX should be tanking its Falcon 9 rocket now at this point. Time now T minus 30 minutes and counting. Just about 29 minutes remaining on the clock. Still quite difficult to see through the fog, but we are getting some signs of vapor, which does indicate that they are in fact tanking, locking in that T0 liftoff time at 7:10 a.m. Eastern, 11:10 UTC. Was part of the campaign for Starship Flight 10. We did get a lot of good visuals for the not only the Starship program, but also the Starlink program, which is relevant to today's operations, of course. 28 Starlink V2 mini satellites on board that Falcon 9 rocket launching today, 28 tomorrow morning as well. And believe if all is on track at Vandenberg, there'll be one more batch of Starlink satellites on Friday evening as well. Getting a good glimpse into the production of the Starlink factory up in Redmond, Washington, which is where those satellites are manufactured. We learned that 70 are being produced every single week, according to SpaceX. So, want to go to a little bit of video now that was shared by the company about how Starlinks are produced and the future for that part of SpaceX's program as they're working towards eventually being able to launch version 3 of Starlink on the massive Starship rocket once that becomes operational.
What a lot of people might not realize when they think about the scale that we're operating is that actually 2/3 of the operational satellites in orbit are Starlink satellites. And then all of those Starlink satellites came from right here in Redmond. We've currently got a constellation of over 8,000 satellites that are flying around in orbit. So they're working together to fill out the whole surface of the Earth, make sure everywhere can have service. So we have these laser links that are connected between the satellites. So each satellite can pass data from one to the other. That is what allows us to have these hundreds of gigabit links between satellites. And that's what allows us to connect every corner of the Earth to high quality, high speed, low latency internet. When you think about that Starlink that you have at home, the technology that's in there and that's in your antenna is very similar to the antenna that's on the satellite. We use what are called phased array antennas, which is a fancy way of describing an antenna that's made up of many little antennas that work together in order to direct their energy to a specific spot on the ground without a motor.
Generally, satellite manufacturing is a very slow process. It takes people weeks or months to build a satellite. At SpaceX, we iterate very fast, and we have learned how to build satellites at the 70 sats a week rate. As we have focused a lot on production rate, we have not forgotten about our satellite reliability, which is critical to our mission.
If you look at the whole world and you ask, where is the satellite industry? It's right here in the USA, in Redmond, where the vast majority of satellites being built are being built right here. Starlink is a truly game-changing technology, and it's all supported by the global satellite constellation from this space here in Redmond. And we're really just getting started at the very beginning of what we want to do with Starlink.
Time now T minus 24 minutes, 48 seconds and counting. John had some gators in his camera's view. Now turning to our friends Chuck and Jen Briggs. They've got the dolphin cam this morning. Quite active pod of dolphins by the look of it, hanging out in the Banana River. Bit of a feeding frenzy this morning by the look of it. Saw a couple of fish making a dash for their lives, but I'm guessing the dolphins are probably going to win this battle this morning. There's at least 4 or 5 of them, if not more. It's a little hard to keep a good running count. Speaking of keeping a good count, though, we're T minus 23 minutes, 39 seconds and counting ahead of the Falcon 9 flight. See the rocket there in the skinny box on the right-hand side of your screen. SpaceX has begun to load cryogenic helium on both the first and second stages, and coming up next will be the so-called big vent as the team begins to thermally condition the feed lines at the pad ahead of loading liquid oxygen aboard the rocket's second stage. T minus 20 minutes, 18 seconds and counting. The thickness of the fog is making it quite hard to discern, but the big vent should be underway now at the pad. You can actually just start to make out the big vent. If you look at the inner stage just beneath the Falcon 9's second stage, you can see a little bit more uh, cloud that is billowing out in between the crew access tower and the inner stage there. That billowing, of course, is not the fog that is continuing to roll in, but that is, in fact, the big vent. Just under 17 minutes to go now as SpaceX continues the fueling process for its Falcon 9 rocket. Coming up at T-minus 16 minutes is when SpaceX will start to flow liquid oxygen on board the rocket's second stage. Just under 16 minutes to go with the big vent now wrapped up. Liquid oxygen flowing on board the rocket's second stage. Let's go ahead and take a moment to talk about where this Falcon 9 is going to be flying once it does leave the pad. Let's talk a little trajectory, shall we? Falcon 9 rocket's going to be flying in a northeasterly trajectory once it heads off from Space Launch Complex 40. Following stage separation, the first stage booster will target a touchdown on the drone ship called Just Read the Instructions. If successful today, this will be the 133rd good landing on that particular drone ship. Also notable, this will be the 400th booster landing for SpaceX to date on a drone ship, if all goes well. SpaceX is creeping up on its 500th overall booster landing, with this mission, again, assuming a good landing, would represent the 494th booster landing to date between their 3 landing zones and their 3 drone ships. SpaceX is working to certify its first stage boosters for up to 40 flights apiece. This particular booster flying today is B-1095, one of the fresher entrants to the SpaceX roster. It's just its second trip to space after launching the Starlink 12-15 mission back in late May. Nearly 100 days ago, last time this booster flew. SpaceX is also interested in not only recovering the first stage booster, but the payload fairings as well. Company saves about $6 million per recovery effort as of last update on the fairings. Following atmospheric reentry, they will splash down in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of steerable parachutes. Once down in the ocean waters, SpaceX will bring them aboard one of their recovery vessels and then back on through Port Canaveral onto the Hangar X site, where they will be refurbished and turned around for future missions. T-minus 12 minutes, 19 seconds and counting. Taking a look at our live chat, want to thank the more than 1,400 of you that are watching live with us this early morning. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button, sharing the stream to allow some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage today. I also want to thank Tim Carter for a very generous $20 super chat. I appreciate that, Tim. Good to see you again today. And Tim says, "Good morning, nerds." Yeah, you've got to be a bit of a space flight nerd in order to be up in the pre-dawn hours awaiting the flight of a Falcon 9 rocket, but we're all here for the love of the game, right? Learn a little, watch a little. Flights are similar, but it's a unique experience every time. Just under 11 minutes to go before the flight of this Falcon 9 rocket. Talking about the particular payload that's on board today, our 28 Starlink V2 Mini optimized satellites. This flight will be the 74th Falcon 9 launch of the year, carrying Starlinks as the primary payload. There have been a couple so far, though, that did include Starshield satellites. Those were Starlinks 13-1 and 13-4. These optimized versions of the Starlink V2 minis are considerably lighter, which allows SpaceX to fly more of them per mission, up to 29 at a time, though typically we see them at the max from here at the Cape flying batches of 28. With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters. They use argon Hall effect thrusters for in-orbit maneuvering. As we saw in the video earlier in the broadcast, they were built and still are built in Redmond, Washington, which is near Seattle. Just about 7.5 minutes to go now before the scheduled departure of this Falcon 9 rocket. At the T-minus 7 minute mark is when SpaceX will begin the engine chill sequence, flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, helping to protect them from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. Just about 5 minutes ago, at this point, the RP-1 tank on the Falcon 9's first stage should be full. coming up on pressurization for the retraction of the strong back.
Falcon 9 tanks are pressing for strong back retract.
And with that good call, as you just heard and can now see, we're getting pad level views of the Falcon 9 rocket and mission audio courtesy of SpaceX. Still a nice little bank of fog around the pad as, of course, the ground tanks are also chilled. Been flowing
Strong back retract has begun.
liquid oxygen on board the Falcon 9 for some time now. Little tricky to see through the vapor there coming up from the second stage, but momentarily the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings are going to be opening up. And then the transporter erector, otherwise referred to as the strong back, will recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. You can start to see it a little bit in motion there. I'll stay in its slightly reclined position until liftoff. Then at that point, it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. Quick bit of housekeeping on the clocks you're seeing. Our clock is in real time. The feed from SpaceX is coming in on a slight delay. So we'll be making our callouts based off of real-time events until we're solely reliant on the SpaceX onboard cameras.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
Good call there on the status of liquid oxygen for the first stage. We'll hear a similar call regarding the Falcon 9's second stage, close to the 2-minute mark. Two minutes and counting.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
And with that call, the Falcon 9 rocket is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. We'll soon be seeing some additional venting from the strong back as the ground gas closeouts. You can actually just start to see that beginning in the SpaceX cam and a little bit in ours as well.
Ground gas close out.
As we come up on the final minute of the count, the Falcon 9 will enter into its automated sequence. That will be noted when the teams denote startup.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
Good call there. With less than 50 seconds to go now, we're just waiting for the SpaceX launch director to give their final go for launch call.
Launch director, go for launch.
And with that go ahead, we're coming up on the final 30 seconds before flight.
T-minus 30 seconds.
20 seconds. 15 seconds. And here we go in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. And we've got liftoff. Liftoff with the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 10-56 mission. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. And a beautiful sunrise ascent as the Falcon 9 takes off from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, now 1 minute into flight. Rocket traveling faster than the speed of sound, approaching max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. Now through that gate, the Falcon's engines are throttling back up. Coming up to the start of MVAC engine chill. Thermally conditioning the... Air is a good call for that. They're thermally conditioning the Merlin vacuum engine on the rocket's second stage. We're coming up to a few events in fairly rapid succession here. We'll have first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, followed by stage separation, and then the ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine. Payload fairings will jettison around the 3-minute mark. About 10 seconds to MECO. MECO.
Main engine
Stage-
cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
Good calls, good onboard visuals from Falcon 9 rocket. Coming up on fairing jettison momentarily. And there you see the payload fairings go.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And a nice view of the two fairing halves, the glow of the second stage, and near the bottom of the big box, you can still see the first stage booster with those occasional puffs. Those are the cold gas thrusters. Just slipped out of frame there. Now Pete's got it back. This is just the second flight for the Falcon 9 first stage booster, tail number 1095 in the SpaceX fleet. It's going to be targeting a touchdown on the drone ship called Just Read the Instructions. A nice view of the two stages there from Chuck and Jen as well. You can see the booster towards the bottom of the screen, the glow of the second stage up in the upper left-hand corner. You can follow along with the telemetry for both stages in the middle of the two boxes on the right-hand side of your screen. About 4.5 minutes into the mission so far. Coming up, the next milestone will be the reignition of 3 of the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the Falcon 9 booster. That'll be the start of the entry burn to dramatically slow that first stage down. Should be starting in about T+6 minutes and 10 seconds, lasting little less than 30 seconds in total. Still tracking the Falcon booster a little bit hard as it gets further out and passes through the clouds that we're seeing now periodically. We may or may not be able to catch the entry burn with the tracking camera. I know Pete's doing his level best, but it is getting trickier and trickier as the booster
Stage
gets
1 FTS has saved.
closer to the start of the entry burn. Should be kicking on right about now.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
And he's got it. Just barely.
Entry burn shutdown.
And with the conclusion of the entry burn, we're approaching 7 minutes into this mission. Coming up next will be the start of the landing burn, calling on just the center engine for the Falcon booster for cushioning ahead of a touchdown on the drone ship. Just read the instructions. That landing burn is set to begin just before the 8-minute mark in today's flight.
Stage 1 transonic. Stage 1 landing burn.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
Landing leg deploy.
Stage 2 FTS has saved.
And
Stage
for
1 landing confirmed.
For the second time, B-1095 is safely down on the drone ship. Notably, that was SpaceX's 400th successful drone ship landing.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And a good call on reaching that desired orbit. Might get one last peek at the Starlink satellites before SpaceX pulls away from its on orbit camera views there. I'll hang with this as long as, well, I guess not. That's all right. To be expected. It's more of an exception to the rule than typical when we get to see one last glimpse of the Starlink satellites. Nevertheless, at this point in the count, about 9.5 minutes into the mission, now that they've achieved a nominal parking orbit The upper stage will continue to cruise until about T plus 54 minutes and 28 seconds post liftoff. The upper stage engine will perform one more burn that'll last just about 2 seconds. That will help to circularize the orbit, setting up the Starlink satellites to be deployed at T plus 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 50 seconds after liftoff. Keep your eyes on the strong back. It'll be coming back up into the upright position as part of SpaceX's process of turning around this pad as quickly as possible for its next flight. As we're working on getting our launch replays in order, let's go ahead and talk about the mission milestones that were accomplished on today's flight and take a look at where things stand for SpaceX and the broader industry. Today's good liftoff and landing marked, as we just mentioned, the second flight of Falcon 9 booster 1095 in the SpaceX fleet. This was the company's 522nd Falcon 9 launch to date, the 105th of the year so far. This was the 458th Falcon booster reflight, or the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This is the company's 156th orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 274th orbital flight from Pad 40 for SpaceX, and the 329th overall orbital launch from this pad as well. Here's the Falcon family of rockets year over year. SpaceX's Vice President of Launch, Kiko Donchev, says they are still tracking towards 170 Falcon 9 launches before year's end. So potentially 65 more to go at minimum is what SpaceX is hoping for if all goes well. Moving on to some recovery stats. Obviously, this is one of the big highlights of today's mission. A good touchdown marked the 133rd landing on the drone ship called Just Read the Instructions. This was SpaceX's 400th drone ship landing successfully to date, and the 494th booster landing overall. Finally, with some industry stats, this was the 72nd orbital launch from the Sunshine State, the 111th from U.S. soil, the 123rd from a U.S. rocket company, and the 193rd overall launch attempt around the world. There have been 5 orbital mishaps so far this year. Here is where our pie chart now currently stands. As a reminder, coming up tomorrow morning at 1:27 a.m. is our next expected launch from here in Florida. Looking for the liftoff of Starlink 10-11 from Historic Launch Complex 39A here at the Kennedy Space Center. We've got our launch replays ready for you. let's go ahead and begin with the fixed press site view as shot by John Pisani. Moving on to the wide view here at the press site. Down to the turn basin. Turning now to Chuck and Jen Briggs' tracking view. Watch for the dolphins at liftoff. And finally concluding with the tracker here at the press site, as shot by John Pisani. And with that, that's going to go ahead and wrap things up for our live coverage of the Starlink 10-56 mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Appreciate all of you who have been with us throughout the course of our coverage today. As a reminder, the Starlink 10-11 mission is on tap for tomorrow morning with a flight departure time currently scheduled for 1:27 a.m. Eastern, 05:27 UTC for those around the world. You're looking live at Complex 39A, where later today the Falcon 9 rocket will emerge from the hangar on the right-hand side of your screen, make the short jog uphill to the pad, and then be brought into the vertical position. You can keep tabs throughout the day on our 24-hour stream, Launch Pad Live. And of course, we'll have live coverage in a dedicated separate stream of this mission beginning 1 hour prior to liftoff. And we are also not too long after that going to be doing some pretty fun reporting later on in the day, which I'll leave just as a tease for now. But John Pisani and I will be up to some fun things in the late morning going into the afternoon, and we'll let you know a little bit more about that around lunchtime on Thursday. So be sure to hop over to our social media accounts, follow us on X, Blue Sky, Threads, and Facebook. Keep a weather eye out for some fun things coming down the pike on Thursday and the days to follow. I want to thank John for managing the tracking cameras, to Stephen for running the technical operations of the broadcast today. Big thanks to Aussie Space Girl, our moderator du jour for this particular stream. And a big thanks to all of our mods for all of their hard work during Starship Flight 10 yesterday. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others. We will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.